An important part of the ADL's work are the international missions, and Foxman decided to allow me to join him. Every year, a few ADL board members and contributors get to join Foxman as he travels to various countries, meeting heads of state, politicians, and other influential people who can help in the fight against anti-Semitism. It's like an organized tour, but apart from visiting museums and other tourist attractions, the chosen ADL members get to join Foxman in taking an active part in the struggle against anti-Semitism.
You have to debate what is proportionate when someone attacks you.
You are serious people, and you're here for serious business, and you're going to see the Holy Father, and everything the ADL does is serious business.
The police escort along the way made me realize I was traveling with some pretty important people.
We're seeing the Pope tomorrow. Rody Friday. Yeah. Good job. Mark Antonio.
Beautiful. How gorgeous.
I'm curious about how Mr. Foxman gets to meet all these important people. Why would all these ambassadors, politicians, and heads of state take the time to meet him?
It's their perception of the power of the Jewish community, which is one of those sides of the anti-Semitism, which is it's a very thin line, you know. They believe we are more powerful than we are. I've always said Jews are not as powerful as the Jews think we are, nor as powerful as our enemies think we are. We're somewhere in between. But they do believe, to some extent, that we can make a difference in Washington, and we're not going to convince them otherwise. So how do you fight this sinister, conspiratorial view of Jews without using it? Look, when the United Nations comes to its General Assembly, we meet with 40 heads of state, foreign ministers. Why?
I think I got it. It's like a poker game in which Foxman bluffs the other side into thinking the Jews have more influence and power in Washington than they really have. The downside is that the idea of Jews being so powerful can result in envy, even hate. Foxman has a very close relationship with the Israeli government.
All right.
Oh yeah, a couple of times.
Israel relies on Foxman when it comes to issues of anti-Semitism. And being the Jewish state, anti-Semitism is always on the agenda.
Hi Abe, I wanted to ask you since we met last about the issue of Venezuela. Because I heard voices kind of saying it's not so bad, and Latin America is not so bad, but I'm not convinced. And the question
You have
is
good reason not to be convinced. It is getting worse.
why?
And little by little, as long as oil money works.
I'm told that by our experts, it's the only, except for Iran, it's the only government-propagated anti-Semitism today around the world. It's a
Formally, right.
This is
First
quite
within
scary.
the country and then outside.
So are you pressing in any way?
We've talked to Jesse Jackson, who has a relationship, but it's not for camera, but there are other plans.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
So we have a very beautiful theme here.
The first example of what Foxman is talking about was a meeting with a special advisor to the Ukrainian President Yushchenko. The Ukrainian government would like to distance itself from the embrace of the Russians and strengthen its ties with the West, most especially the United States. They believe that the Jews can become their allies in the US Congress.
We come to celebrate your democracy, but we also come with mixed feelings. The history of Jewish people in this country is primarily one of tragedy. We would like to see a more active, a more aggressive approach to dealing with issues of anti-Semitism. It took a long...
Foxman is concerned about the Ukrainian government's comparison of the famine in the Ukraine before World War II with the Holocaust.
The one thing that you need to be sensitive about is not to link it with the Holocaust. Be careful that it not be played as your genocide, our genocide, because that will be counterproductive on all sides.
We, of course, respect Holocaust, and I understood your message, and we try to be very, very diplomatic.
Here it is.
I was impressed by the way Foxman handled the meeting, but it also raised some questions for me.
He was kind of pushing him a little bit, huh?
He was kind of what?
Pushing him.
Yes, of course.
It's always like that? Yeah?
Of course.
I wasn't sure how bringing up things that had happened over 60 years ago had any relevance to fighting anti-Semitism today.
In order to combat it effectively, I think that you have to take responsibility for anything that happened in the past and then reach the present and then go forward.
With your husband, when you quarrel, sometimes you need to give some slack to get what you want.
No?
You always
I bring
start?
up everything from the past, 50 years, what his mother did. Absolutely not. No, that's not the American Jewish way. I don't know about the Israeli Jewish way.
Even the guilt trip.
That's, yeah, absolutely. We need to play on that guilt.
I asked when you're having a quarrel, when she give you some slack sometimes to, to make up, but she said no.
I'm always wrong, and she's always right.
But wait a minute, do I ever forget anything in the past?
Never. Suzanne will tell me 20 years ago what I did wrong. If we have an argument now, but, 20 years you did this. I said, but Suzanne, it was 20
Wait
years
a
ago.
minute, but do you know why? Because he has not stood up and taken responsibility for that behavior.
The guilt trip she's giving you, does it help?
No.
So maybe the guilt trip we're giving them is not the right solution. Maybe we should, give them some slack and say, okay, let's be friends. Not forget the past, but kind of be a little bit more, liberal.
Moderate.
Yeah.
Something we happen to, I have to
The guilt of the father should not be visited on the guilt on the sons. And it's true, of course it's true.
I agree with you.
It's true, you have to.
You cannot let it go down, but you can't keep playing on it as heavily as some people do. It's got to be moderate.
But the ADL is like one of the people who plays quite heavily.
No, we're moderate.
No, ADL plays heavily. There is not a speech.
I'm feeling it.
There is not a speech. I'm not talking to him. I'm not talking to him. What is he? What are you, the Mossad or something?
I was fortunate. I'm passionate, believe me. I don't fight as much.
I could understand Abe's sensitivity to the Holocaust being a survivor, and was moved by the support he received from the ADL mission members. But the film I wanted to make is about anti-Semitism today, and I decided to explore on my own an incident I had read about in the papers. In Moscow, a man with a knife had entered the synagogue and had started stabbing people. The incident was recorded on the security cameras.
Раздались истерические, неестественные крики, как будто убивает человека. Мы все бросили монеты и выбежали в дом.
The stabbing was a shocking reminder of what anti-Semitism can be. I thought I should speak with the members of the synagogue to see how they felt about their own safety.
В Израиле мы все время слышим, что есть очень сильный антисемитизм.
Где?
Здесь?
Неправда.
Что неправда?
Этого
Что
нету. Ну нету. Ну нету, понимаете? Нет его. Потом, понимаете,
почему говорят в
многие
Израиле?
евреи сами виноваты. Вот представляете, вот он работает на заводе. И он плохо работает. И его не двигают по службе, не продвигают, карьеры нет. Он говорит, это потому что я еврей. Я говорю, ну я же тоже еврей, а я главный технолог завода. Как же тебя-то нафиг, тебя антисемитизм, а ко мне нет?
А почему в Израиле говорят, что здесь очень сильный антисемитизм?
Ну что-то надо говорить. Ну что-то надо говорить, как-то себе надо оправдывать. И все свои неудачи в жизни человек это объясняет. Вот я был еврей, вот меня притесняли, вот мне не давали дорогу. Ну хорошо, ты приехал в Израиль. Там тебя никто не притесняет. Что ж ты здесь не продвинулся?
I didn't understand. How come these religious Jews, who go to the synagogue every day and are such easy targets for anti-Semites, don't seem so concerned about their personal safety? I decided to ask the local rabbi in Kiev about it.
The truth is that for some reason secular Jews are more worried about anti-Semitism than religious Jews, if you noticed. It's not that way. It's just that on their agenda of being Jewish, anti-Semitism is not part of being Jewish for an Orthodox Jew. Part of being Jewish is not fighting anti-Semitism. Part of being Jewish is practicing Judaism. There's no mitzvah in the Torah when you practice Judaism to fight anti-Semitism. At the same time, fighting anti-Semitism is something that's important for the Jewish people, for Jewish communities throughout the world. And very often, people that are not practicing, like you say, that's where they find their thing. So they'll, express their Jewish identity in a way that they'll be fighting anti-Semitism and thereby helping the community, in its fight for anti-Semitism.
The rabbi said that it is actually an issue of identity. I wanted to know if Suzanne and Harvey Prince would agree with this theory.
Yeah, I mean, you can't film this because,
I do think that the ADL helps to reinforce our Jewish identity because we're not Orthodox and we don't have a religious Jewish life. The ADL provides a forum to be Jewish. I mean, it certainly is 99.9% Jewish, and it gives us an opportunity to explore being Jewish, to look at Jewish issues, and it does reinforce our Jewish identity.
Babi Yar, in the suburbs of Kiev, is a mass grave in which 33,771 Jews were shot after digging their own grave over the course of just 2 days in September 1941.
I think the worst thing for me, standing here, is that it could happen today.
Oh, God.
I agree.
Yeah. I can see people being marched out of Kiev and shot
Marilyn,
by some people who would decide that's the thing to do.
Right.
Maybe they do it to gays. Maybe they do it to...
That's why we have to support Israel.
Whatever.
Israel's our insurance policy.
If it was a question of the continuing existence of Israel, would you move to Israel?
Yes, in a minute. Good for you, I think. In a minute. Because as far as I'm concerned, without Israel, there isn't a safe Jew in the world. That's the way I feel.
I agree.
So you have two people who immediately move to Israel if you have a problem.
Right.
If Israel needs, you have two people right there.
I joined the army. They wouldn't take an old lady, but I would be there. I'd roll bandages. I don't know.
He's asking a question. The journalist.
Does that mean that you're more loyal to Israel then?
No, of course not.
That's right.
So how do you coexist these two emotions?
How do I like what?
How these two notions coexist? The fact that...
Easy. You love your children, you love your husband. You love your friends equally.
Do you love your children more than you love your husband?
Of course not.
Sometimes.
But you might die for your children before you would die for your husband.
It's like the question.
You
If
might.
you were in a life
Israel is the
road,
husband or the kids?
I'm sorry?
Israel is the husband or the kids?
The kids.
The kids.
The kids. Yeah, the kids.
Israel's not a child
Israel is
anymore.
love for a child. There's a love for a child that different than a love for a husband. There's nothing like really a love for a child.
it's a much more protective.
Right.
No, it's a much more,
According to the ADL mission members, Israel is a child which needs their support, but is also their insurance policy in case something terrible should ever happen again.